One, we are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a podcast channel where we talk to PropTech CEOs and founders from all over the world and learn from them insights on their PropTech businesses. Before I introduce my guest today, I request you all, if you're listening to this, to hit that subscribe button because that way these precious conversations reach to wider audience. All right, so our guest today is David Rajakovich. David has led a SaaS company from zero to a mid eight-figure valuation through two exits. He is on a mission to invest money and energy into building the next unicorn. I'm keeping the intro short because we will let David do the needful and provide the detailed intro. With that, let's welcome David. David, welcome to PropTech Buzz. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ravi. Thanks for having me on the program.
Excellent. So before we get to the meatier stuff, David, what will be a good context setter is for the audience to know a little bit of a background story. You have had a impressive career so far. Maybe why don't you give us a little rundown of your career?
Sure, absolutely, Ravi. So I'm a driven entrepreneur and CEO that have had experienced success in everything that I've committed to. I've led two private equity exits, as you've mentioned. I've sold to and developed solutions for over 250 blue chip clients along the way. And that was mainly with Skill Dynamics, which is an ed tech company focused on digital training for procurement and supply chain professionals. My
Nice.
areas of expertise include solving business problems using technology, go-to-market strategy, learning and development strategy, and most recently, I've uh, dove headlong into the prop tech world and understanding the world of commercial real estate. I've also been an institutionally backed CEO, so I understand that world as well.
Lovely, lovely. So I know then Recreate happened. I was very fascinated. That's why I wanted to have you on the pod.
Hmm.
Why don't we start with the mission of Recreate?
Yeah, absolutely. So Recreate is on a mission to make it a joy, which it currently is most certainly not, to acquire and let the offices of people's dreams in a cost effective and environmentally friendly way. So we're on a mission to essentially digitalize real estate. And what that means for us is that we do 3D visualizations of office space that are fully immersive, so beautiful, elegant environments, a very realistic representation of the office space that landlords and asset managers are looking to let.
Nice. And maybe you can introduce Recreate. What does it do? What problem it is trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I teamed up with Christophe Dubose, who's my co-founder. We're ironically enough two uh, Americans by birth that have gotten together here in the UK, and uh, we were brought together by a mutual connection. I looked at many different companies as potentially an angel investor and someone I could work alongside and really add value to. And this is the one I've actually chosen. Recreate. The biggest problem we solve, there is a huge amount, so over 30 million square feet of vacant office space in London alone. Now, this is not just a London problem. It's not even just a UK problem, but this is a global problem. We've all heard of the debate. I think most of us have heard of remote working versus the office. And I
Right.
think the office is going to make a comeback. However, companies are now finding that they need to give a very good reason or justification for bringing people back to the office. The office can't just be a static place that that is. You think of the program in the UK and the US of The Office, where everybody just kind of sits around and they do the same thing every day. And that is something that I think is going away. We need to have a good reason for coming back to the office, and part of that reason needs to be about the design of the office, and that's where we can come in. So I mentioned we have this 30 million square feet of vacant inventory out there,
Right.
and it kind of 8 visits a day maximum, or say 40 visits a week, is not going to solve this problem. So if we have to rely on physical visits then landlords and asset managers are never going to shift all this inventory. So we have to do it in a different way. The other problem that's happening is that landlords are currently speculatively refitting their space. So let's say a tenant moves out. They then fix up the ceilings, the floors, the walls in order to make it pretty, to make it and
Attractive.
make it lettable.
Yeah.
Now, if you do that, you are speculatively adding cost only for a tenant to come in and say, no, I'd like the meeting room over there, or I'd like the kitchen over there, or we need a conference room over here. And so if I speculatively refit this space, then I need to potentially do everything over
Right.
and make it how the client wants. So what we do is we eliminate that whole problem.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we design in real time with the clients on a video conference call exactly how they want their space to be.
Hmm.
This is something that is really powerful. So people who don't want to travel all the way from, say, San Francisco, there's a San Francisco tech company that's looking to establish a space in London.
Right.
People don't have to fly all the way from San Francisco just to do a physical visit
Right.
and spend the better part of their day, if not multiple days, looking at which office space could fit them.
Right.
We can be on a call with them, design that space, whether it's a representation of an existing space or whether it's even just their ideal space. And we will then go and match them with the perfect space and landlord for them. Now, the beauty of this for landlords is that it not only eliminates this speculative spend, but it also eliminates the cost and the environmental impact of doing these redundant refits.
Right.
So, and the other element to this is that their income or yield goes up because we can quickly get them new tenants a lot faster than they could just by doing physical visits.
Got it. And how do you make money? What's the business model here?
Yeah. So the business model, and before I probably should mention that it's so when we design the space with our clients and give it to tenants, not only do we design their ideal space, but off of the back of that, it is then there's an output automatically of the bill of materials that can be used to procure all the materials and all the work needed to actually make that space inhabitable and make it according to the ideal space. So the landlords are not only saving money on acquiring these new tenants, but they're also saving time on being able to be ready to go to procure the materials they need to start the refit as soon as their previous tenant leaves the building.
And how
Now,
how is how is this bill of materials generated? Is there a human intervention, or is this automated, or how?
yeah, this is part of our secret sauce. So my business partner is very innovative in this space and understands the commercial real estate market to a large extent. He spent a great deal of time already inputting a huge amount of materials, whether it be furniture or construction materials, piping, you name it. He's created this large database such that when he's moving around this design and putting meeting rooms in certain locations, et cetera, the bill of materials needed to create that is automatically generated. This is not something where you need to go pay an expert or an assessor to go in and understand what is needed. We've already done all that work in the background. So for landlords, it's very easy just to have this output of the materials needed to make this design happen, which is a huge cost and time saving for those landlords.
Nice. So let's move on to the business model here.
Yeah, absolutely. So business model is that we charge a one-off fee for the design or the recreation of the space in an immersive 3D environment. And then we'll run a subscription model for hosting that space on an ongoing basis. The idea behind this, you think, okay, why would landlords pay for this ongoing cost? The cost is quite minimal in terms of what it would cost them if their void periods were extended. And the idea is, as soon as a tenant, so let's say a tenant moves into this beautifully designed space that they're in. First of all, they're very unlikely to ever want to leave that space because it has been tailored to them. And because the design is digital, it can be very easily adapted throughout the life of that tenant's stay in the property. But let's say at some point they decide that they're going to leave. At that point, we can, within a matter of hours, that property or that space can be back on the market and be shown digitally to potential tenants all around the world. So you can see how powerful this is and how quickly landlords can shift their space that's not even vacant. And on top of that, as soon as this tenant gives their notice, we already have new tenants coming on board. We already are designing it while the old tenants are still in there. We're designing the space according to how the new tenants want it. And the day that the previous tenants move out, that's when the refit and reconstruction of the space can begin, so that the new tenants move in even quicker. And that's really how we plan to make our money. We will be adding a number of different things. So there's a facilities management piece to this, because we have all the materials and even say the lights, and we know exactly the specification of the lights that are there.
Right.
Then we can add on a facilities management piece where let's say one of those lights needs replaced. We know exactly what it is just by clicking on it. You can see it, and you can reorder it. And right now, let me tell you, the commercial real estate space has kind of missed the digitalization wave and the internet age. Even if you ask a landlord for their specifications or documentation, it's very likely to be either paper documents, PDF. They're going to be, some of them will actually have data rooms where all this information is gathered, but still it's very much an analog process. And what we want to do is make it a kind of digital process.
Correct. Uh, just curious. You mentioned about the Tesla tire story before we met for this. Do you want to mention that? I thought that was quite relevant here. No.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's very much relevant to the facilities management piece. So yeah, thank you for prompting me on that one, Ravi. So I was looking at my Tesla the other day, and one of the tires was a bit low. Now, on the interactive screen that you have, you go to the tires, and they have a digital representation that shows you what the pressure is currently, and it shows you what tire pressure they ideally should be at. Now, this seems like a really simple and stupid thing. However, I've had cars in the past where you're searching through owner's manuals, you're searching the web, and you're trying to find how many PSIs your tires should be, and it's just a really small but simple example of how digitalizing your space can save you so much time and hassle when there's anything that you need to do. So let's say even you'd like to model how replacing your current energy sources with solar energy would work. The possibilities are endless in terms of how you model that, and you can see the impact on your space before you even have to go and actually implement it. So it's just a much more efficient, much cheaper, and better way to do experimentation with different designs, whether it's energy, whether it's the furniture itself, whether it's how much open plan I should have versus how many private offices and how many meeting rooms. All of that can be modeled very efficiently. And it goes back to the point I was making earlier of providing a very strong reason why you should be going back to the office. And our platform is very much geared up for you to do that.
Got it. Excellent. So, just curious, you mentioned about the case when the tenant leaves. In commercial real estate, the tenure is much longer than residential, I suppose. Isn't it? So, my experience is on residential. So,
Mhm.
usually, tenant leaving it happens once in a few years, I suppose, right? So, what would be an average tenant occupancy rate?
Yeah, I mean, the exact statistics I'm not. I'd have to go and find. However, the trend is that we are uh, the lease length period is very much going down. So
Mm,
it used to be that you had to sign a 10-year lease or a 5-year lease, but now tenants are in quite a good, strong position, and
right.
they can demand shorter leases that are more flexible. And they also want to, as they grow, and I faced this problem as CEO of my old company, we were deciding on where we wanted to have an office space.
Correct.
And we had to think, okay, we need this, they want us to sign a 5-year lease, but we don't know how big that we're going to be in 5 years. We could be double the size that we are today.
Right.
So how do we do that? And we basically got the landlord to agree that we wouldn't have to necessarily break the lease or pay to break the lease. We could shift into another part of the building that would allow for us to grow. And so that sort of flexibility is what tenants are demanding these days. And lease times are getting shorter and shorter, and they're becoming more flexible. So the need for this is only going to be increasing over time.
Got it. So with the way things are today, how does the next 2 3 years look like for you?
Yeah, the next 2 or 3 years. So we're already onboarding our first clients. My business partner is very much inside this world of commercial real estate in London. So based on his contacts and relationships, we already have some early adopters that are really excited about what we can provide. We'll be targeting those office locations in London, especially, and in the greater London area, where they're having difficulty shifting that inventory. So
Hmm.
a lot of the prime locations in London already, they are not having a particularly difficult time leasing out their space. However, everyone else, the 90 some percent of the rest, are having difficulty, which is leading to all this vacant space. So we're going to be targeting those locations and helping them expand their search and make it even more convenient for clients who now their users are demanding a better and more customized experience. We're going to help those tenants actually deliver that.
Correct.
So that's going to be a big thing. We're going to be launching our two-sided marketplace, launching a new brand. We're going to be going the extra mile for especially for our early clients to make sure they have an absolute 100% great experience. And we believe that those people will be spreading through word of mouth and in advocacy and testimonials to help us expand our reach into the greater unknown beyond our early adopters.
Correct. And I'm sure you have had conversations already. What is the early feedback that you're getting from your clients?
Yeah, clients love how real and immersive our designs are. It really feels like you are inside the building and you can look around and really understand everything about the interior of a building without actually having to physically be there. So this is something where we have a huge advantage. We also are not going to rely on people being gamers or having any deep understanding of how to move around an immersive environment. So we will be guiding clients, especially early on, through that whole process. We're not going to leave you alone to kind of try to fumble your way through a building and then get stuck and be floating through the air outside the building, which I've seen happen on multiple occasions already. So we are going to be guiding you through that. And yes, our immersive designs are what really stand out, and the fact that we produce a bill of materials off the basis of a real-time call with the clients designing their optimal space. So that is something that is unique in the market, and that is something that no one else can deliver. And it's going to make a huge difference in terms of reducing void periods and reducing speculative spend.
Got it. Nice. And you're reducing cost, you are increasing the yield, you are eliminating speculative refits. Is there any other element that we are missing when it comes to reducing yields and increasing reducing cost and increasing yields?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've touched on this briefly, just to drive the point home, is that we can then, once you're on our platform, we can begin marketing your property within hours after a tenant serves their notice to leave. So that gives you a huge advantage over the competition. You don't have to go in and speculatively refit. We're not talking about static photos. We're talking about a real immersive environment ready to go to be marketed on the web so that your global audience can then find your property and begin the process of designing and getting moved in. So I
Correct.
think that's, of course, yeah, no speculative refits. The the other element is the, the CO2 reduction emissions, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a bit. But that's the regulatory environment is definitely getting more and more difficult for landowners and for asset managers. So that's something that you need to really be cognizant of.
Yeah, so let's talk about the CO2 emissions and how you are trying to limit those emissions. So what are you doing to become a more green company?
Yeah, absolutely. So the British Council of Offices identified eliminating speculative refits as a key action needed to hit CO2 reduction targets. And there's some very ambitious targets that have been established by COP26 and the Paris Agreement. So these are things that are going to get more and more difficult over time. And if you're not digitalizing, then you're going to fall behind. The landlords need to watch out for the fact that EPC ratings of so they must be able to achieve at least a C rating by 2025 and a B rating by 2030, where they'll not be allowed to rent out their space, which is it's just kind of the doomsday scenario, the nuclear option, if you will. The so what we do, because we're not doing these speculative refits, there's less material wastage there. So all the supply chain emissions that go with delivering, producing, and storing the materials, and I know all about the supply chain because I created an entire supply chain academy, if you will, in my previous role. And I can tell you that the emissions associated with all of that is enormous. So if we can eliminate even part of our speculative refits, we will be having a massive impact on CO2 emissions and the environment generally.
Correct.
Also, even going beyond that, once a property is digitalized and there's a realistic digital representation of everything inside that property, just like in the Tesla tire example, and we can just click on an area, we can click on a pipe, we can click on a light, we can click on an energy source, or even model the ventilation and noise, and there's just a million factors. Once we have that all digitalized, we can model out the energy usage and redesign the space and redesign energy sources to optimize that energy uses. So using more sustainable energy and even how we reduce the need or the demand for energy within those buildings.
Got it. Thank you so much, David. I'm just left with one question that I'm curious about. How's the funding space for you? Like, is this bootstrapped? Are you like self-funded, or are you looking for more funding? How do you funding your operations?
Yep. Right now, we are bootstrapped. So between myself and my co-founder, Christoph, we are funding operations at the moment because we really believe strongly in what we're doing.
Right.
And we don't want to give away the farm too early, if you will.
Mhm.
So what we're looking to do is gain even more traction, and we have plenty of funding in place now to to have a good strong runway. Um, we we will be looking at grant funding, and we will be looking and talking to VCs. However, there's absolutely no hurry to dive into that world, and we're certainly um, yeah, we're certainly open to it, but we don't need that sort of funding at the moment.
Got it. Excellent. This brings us to the end of a fascinating conversation with David. David, thank you for sharing everything about Recreate. You're doing something really radical and transformational, not just for the business, for the commercial real estate, but the promise to contribute also in reducing emissions, which I think is the core of your business. So thank you, and all the best, and we'll keep a keen eye on how things shape up, and we'll do our bit to promote your business and connect to the right people from our end. So with
Great.
that, all best wishes, David.
Great, Ravi. Yeah, it was a pleasure being here, and I know that you're doing some interesting things as well in this space. So it was great to get to know you a bit and to hear your story, because I think yeah, you've got a lot of potential in what you're working on as well, and I really appreciate the invite here. So yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, David.